Welcome to Age, Pension, Super and Retirement. I'm your host Yvonne, and remember this is information and opinion only, not personal advice. Today, continuing our series on aged care, we are looking at respite. And to help us unpack this topic, we welcome back the Director of Prosperity Planning Partners, Gayle McHugh.
Nice to be here again. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So respite, we've touched on this previously, but just to recap, when would someone use respite, Gayle?
Well, firstly, you have to have an aged care assessment that actually entitles the person that needs the care to be eligible for residential respite. Not everyone is going to automatically be eligible for residential respite. It's more, if you've got a level 3 or 4 package, home care package, you're more likely to have it included. And if you have just been assessed for permanent care, you usually will have the opportunity to have residential respite unless that ACAT assessment, that aged care assessment team assessment, has been done as an emergency.
Great. So if respite is the best option, how does that work? For example, if someone finds out that respite is the way to go, do they start ringing around? How does it actually work?
Well, firstly, not all facilities will offer respite care because they have to have the respite days for the facility approved as part of their government funding. So not all places will offer that. They may say, I'm sorry, we only take somebody for respite if they are permanently moving to care with us. And they usually limit that to only a couple of weeks. The reason for that is there's a significant shortage of aged care beds in comparison to need, which is why they have the need as a facility to manage their respite services for individuals. And while an ACAT assessment might say you're entitled to up to 62 days of residential respite care, it doesn't mean that the facility has the number of days to give every person 62 days of respite care.
Right. So the rules are, what you're saying is the rights are 62 days. Many either don't offer it or have a very limited amount of time. Are there any other rules around respite that we need to know about? Can it be extended?
Not so much rules, but they usually only approve them in a 2-week block. And that's frequently to help the facility manage their obligations under their respite services. But it's also a really firm indicator that there may be somebody who may need the bed more permanently than your respite care person does. Remember, I said there was a shortage of beds. There still is a shortage of beds, even though additional places have been opened. Pre the Aged Care Royal Commission, there's evidence that shows that up to 42% of providers were making losses in providing aged care services, residential aged care services to people. The big kicker there is that because of that, there wasn't enough money available to warrant people building new facilities. So there is still a shortage of beds in comparison to the actual need of the community.
And I'm curious, if someone was in a position to stay longer, is there ever a case of being able to stay longer than 62 days?
I have not heard of it ever being approved unless it manages to switch between one financial year and the next, because it's a financial year allocation. So if somebody moved into respite care in, say, late May or mid-May, they might be able to get right up to the 30th of June and a few weeks into the next financial year, depending upon the facility and also depending upon the need for the person to go into permanent care. Because in some instances, and one of the few instances I've seen this happen, is where somebody has been palliative and the care facility has just extended the residential respite past the 2 weeks into 6 weeks, then the person has passed. They can be a little bit kind, but they're not always kind because they are running a business.
Yeah, such a good answer.
Well, see, it's a thing because people go, oh, 62 days, I'm entitled to it. Doesn't mean the facility's got it. And that's one thing that a lot of people tend to forget. They may not have the capacity to give you those 62 days.
That's clear. Thanks, Gayle. Why would respite be used rather than permanent care, Gayle?
Well, I love respite from the perspective of it's actually designed to support the carer to keep the loved one at home. And when I say that, it's designed to allow the carer to take time, whether it be that they might take a little holiday from care or as in caring for their loved one. They might have a family event that's really important on the other side of the country that they want to go to, but mum or dad isn't in a position to fly. And I can assure you, trying to get somebody who has dementia on a plane and get them to know that it's appropriate to line up and stuff like that. I've done this. And let me tell you, it was an adventure I would not repeat. And that was to take my mother-in-law to my niece's wedding. And let me tell you, I thought, where's the bar? All I wanted was a drink after we got through security. It was so stressful.
Gayle, I appreciate you highlighting actually the needs for carers because in this, perhaps I could suggest that they're often overlooked and not putting the oxygen mask on themselves first.
That is a great analogy. Carers do need to put that oxygen mask on because they will burn out. They will get physically unwell. They will be mentally so stressed that they may head to the bar like I wanted to.
Gayle, how is respite paid for?
Effectively, you pay a daily care fee. Now, some facilities will ask you to pay an extra service fee. That's if they're an extra service fee accredited facility. So currently the daily care fee is close to $64 a day, and that amount can be paid by the person who's going into care. So the person who goes into care has to pay for it. But if there is some money in a home care package that might allow for that to be paid for, so if there's a reserved amount still hasn't been used in one of the package levels, maybe 3 or 4 is more likely to have it, you can frequently have the 2 weeks of respite paid for by the package that they've been approved for.
That's so interesting. So would their home care package effectively be suspended and they'd redirect those funds?
Well, effectively, they're just going to take the money out of the home care package while that person is in care. And this sometimes happens just before somebody goes permanent or in the instance of somebody, the carer needing to take a break. It just depends because not everyone's got that amount of money still sitting in their package. But if it's not paid for by the home care package, you can actually afford, if you're on a full pension, daily care fee meets around 85% of the full age pension as it stands. So it should be affordable.
Gayle, is the respite means tested?
Currently, no. I say currently, no. There's some changes going on and it will depend, I suppose, on the services that are used. Of course, remember I said that you and I have had a conversation where we know that aged care fees are increasing and it's going to include a fee based on your services that you use if you're moving to permanent aged care. So at the moment, it's not means tested. It's basically only available if it's been assessed as being needed by the ACAP team.
Okay, and is this means testing, is this all changing on the 1st of November?
Yeah, means testing is changing on the 1st of November. It's going to have a new name and it's going to have different factors involved in the cost of care for permanent resident. At the moment, there haven't been any major changes indicated for residential respite, but it depends on how it flows through, really. They're still trying to determine the format in which the fees will be charged.
Gayle, is a RAD, which you may like to just say again what that stands for, used for respite?
A RAD is a refundable accommodation deposit, and no, it's not required for residential respite because a RAD is required for a permanent move to care. And that may or may not be true. And I say that because it depends on the individual who's moving to care, their asset position.
That's something that I think we'll be talking about in our next episode. Gayle, if someone wanted to reach you, how could they get in touch?
Can email me at Gayle, Gayle, at prosperityplanning.com.au, or they can call me on 0407 159 298.
Now, I guess we're going to have a look at what not to do. And I understand that from a financial point of view, you've probably seen it all.
Yep.
Feel free to enlighten us what you suggest people should not do.
Firstly, take a breath and think about it, because we're going to be having a lot of repercussions come from trying to divest your loved one of assets. So giving away, selling for cheaper than it should be, transferring a home to a trust, those types of things are all going to be assessed by Centrelink as gifting and will result in deprivation of assets. Now, you can still technically make gifts of up to $10,000 a financial year, up to $30,000 over a 5-year period, and not impact an age pension. But if you start to give away more than that, you are going to create implications that will be long-term for your loved one. Now, another thing to bear in mind is if you're doing this under power of attorney, you shouldn't be. If you're trying to get rid of assets under a power of attorney, you are breaking the rules, because the role of a power of attorney is to preserve the assets of the attorney. So the person who owns the assets should still have access to the assets. I'm going to give you an example of what I mean by that. I worked with a family in the end of 2024, and the lady had a lovely home that she had paid a very small amount for, a couple of $100,000 for. And when push come to shove and the property went to auction, it sold for in excess of $3.4 million. Now, we could have had her powers of attorney, could have chosen to help themselves to the money, but they knew that they would be legally doing the wrong thing if they did that. So we have got all of her money invested, and we've created a replacement income stream for her, because the sale of her home suddenly went from being an exempt asset to an asset that's its full market value, and she lost her age pension. So there's things like that to consider, because if you're giving away assets, somebody has got to fund the cost of care. So don't give them away, because Centrelink will frown upon you. But worse still, if you're doing this under POA, you effectively could find yourself on charges, because depriving somebody of assets when they're not capable of managing their own monies, and you're taking advantage of somebody who's at a technical disadvantage because of loss of capacity, can cause the police to go, oh, hello, we'll put you in jail. That's the worst case scenario. So please look after yourself if you're acting as an EPOA, at the same time as you are looking after your loved one's financial affairs.
Wow, that brings it home with that example there, Gayle. And are these gifting rules, do they parallel Centrelink aged pension gifting rules?
Yes, they are, because Centrelink actually will assess the individual's fees based on what they know. So you've got one part of the government, Centrelink, assessing the fees, because they provide financial support to the majority of our retirees. So they go, well, we know most of this stuff, guys. So, just give us a little bit of an update about what your house is worth and the condition of your property. And that's when they start to apply a means-tested care fee. So don't deprive them, because they know what they've got. Effectively, you can't hide a transfer of a home or gifting of a couple of $100,000 or buying a house under its true market value. It's just not done without some form of repercussion applying.
That's great, Gayle, and thank you so much for explaining respite, which I have to confess until quite recently I did not know it existed. I'd heard of permanent aged care and I'd heard of home care packages, but that other middle bit, that was missing. So I wonder perhaps there are many other people there that are just now putting the puzzle together with your help.
And from a financial planner's perspective, we consider a residential respite period, as much as we can get, to be effectively like gold, because it can mean that we have time to adjust assets so that we can afford to fund, as in we can maybe sell part of a share portfolio or take a withdrawal out of super or whatever we need to do, break a term deposit, all those things, so that the family can afford to pay the refundable accommodation deposit when the person eventually goes to permanent care. So we use that to our advantage and to minimise the cost of care, because most people don't realise that the aged care facility will say, we have a bed available, it's permanent. And you go, oh my God, I've got to sign. So you sign. And from the day that you sign as a permanent resident, they can charge you outstanding interest effectively on the outstanding RAD amount, which becomes a DAP, which is a daily accommodation payment. And then they can charge a means tested care fee, and they can charge an extra service fee if a person is permanent versus being on respite. So we use that to our advantage all the time.
That sounds like an amazing opportunity rather than a knee-jerk reaction, which I'd hate to imagine what some people have done with either out getting professional financial advice and not knowing that respite is an option.
Oh, and in some instances, as I said before, if it's an emergency ACAT done in hospital, frequently respite is not an option. So my encouragement to you is get that ACAT done at home if you can make it happen. And ideally be there so that you can answer some of the questions that will be asked of your loved one, because sometimes they think they're far more capable than they are, and they will tell the assessment team, oh, no, I do all that myself. And you might be running around like a maniac in the background doing lots of things to support them to stay at home. And they just take it for granted.
Thank you so much, Gayle. I feel like you're putting this all together so that I can sort of see a little bit of a flow chart. In our next episode, we will be talking about permanent care. Remember that this is information and opinion only and never personal advice. For our international listeners, the code word is RED for those that are wanting to join the Facebook group, Age, Pension, Super and Retirement. And again, thank you so much for your generous time and your knowledge. Thank you, Gayle.
You're more than welcome.